I never thought a single moment could change my entire life. But that day, sitting alone on a cold city sidewalk, everything shifted forever. Grace's voice trembled as she looked back on the darkest time of her life, homeless, 8 months pregnant, and facing a future that felt impossible. Yet just when all hope seemed lost, a stranger's unexpected kindness sparked a journey no one could have predicted. What happened next wasn't just about survival. It was about finding love, strength, and a family where none existed before. Stay with me because the truth behind Grace and Ethan's story will surprise you, and it might just restore your faith in humanity. Don't blink because this tale is full of twists that will keep you on the edge of your seat until the very last second. Grace Thompson sat on the cold sidewalk in San Francisco's financial district, her back pressed against the trunk of an old oak tree. The bustling city around her was a blur, glass towers gleaming in the afternoon sun, crowds rushing past, indifferent to the young woman cradling her swollen belly. She had 8 months to go and $7 to her name. The threadbare floral dress she wore was wrinkled and stained, but she clutched it around her as if it could protect her from the storm she was living through. "Mommy's going to find a way," she whispered softly to the life inside her, feeling a faint kick in response. Tears slipped down her cheeks, silent and bitter. Just that morning, Brandon Lewis, her ex-boyfriend, had made good on his threat. The lease on the small apartment they once shared had been abruptly canceled. The police had come and told her she had nowhere to stay, pregnant, alone, and abandoned. She wandered the streets for hours, dragging her battered suitcase behind her, stopping at every help-wanted sign she saw. But with each application, the rejection stung more deeply. "We don't hire pregnant women," a clerk said flatly once she revealed her condition. "Sorry, maybe next time." Her feet ached, swollen beyond recognition, and the sun was setting. The financial district, with all its towering buildings and endless glass, felt colder than the night sky. The only refuge she found was the shadow of the oak tree, a spot she'd hoped to rest for just a few minutes, but now she was rooted there, trapped by despair. Grace's parents had died in a car accident when she was 16. Brandon had systematically isolated her from friends and family over the years, his control tightening with every passing day. She had lost her job at the bookstore 2 months ago when her pregnancy made her too much trouble, according to her manager. And now, homeless with a baby on the way, the future seemed more uncertain than ever. At that moment, a sleek black Tesla slowed at the traffic light just ahead. Ethan Campbell, a self-made tech mogul, drummed his fingers impatiently on the steering wheel. His meeting with Japanese investors had run late, and now he was racing against time to join his 5 p.m. video call. Ethan had built an empire from the ground up, but the price had been steep 18-hour workdays, nights spent alone in a mansion that felt more like a museum than a home. As the light turned green, his gaze drifted to the sidewalk where Grace sat. Something about her made him look twice. Maybe it was the way she sat upright despite exhaustion, or the gentle way she stroked her belly, whispering words of comfort. She wasn't just another homeless woman, there was dignity in her defeat. Suddenly, Ethan made a decision that surprised even himself. He pulled over, parking just a few feet from where Grace was sitting. He stepped out, the weight of his expensive suit contrasting sharply with the tattered dress she wore. "Excuse me," he said gently. "Are you okay?" Grace looked up, startled. "Okay," she repeated bitterly. "I'm 8 months pregnant, homeless, and broke. So no, I'm not okay." She raised her chin defiantly, refusing to let him see her pain. Ethan noticed the worn suitcase, the redness around her eyes, and the way her pride battled with desperation. "I'm not here to give you charity," he said carefully. "I'm asking if you need help. There's a cafe around the corner. Maybe I can buy you something to eat." "I'm not asking for handouts," Grace replied quickly. "I need a chance. A job. I know I don't look like the ideal candidate with this belly, but I'm hardworking, responsible, and quick to learn. I studied literature for 3 years before things went south. I can do any office work that doesn't require heavy lifting." Ethan's respect for her grew instantly. Instead of pleading, she was asking for an opportunity. "What happened?" he asked, curiosity softening his tone. Grace hesitated, but something about his earnest gaze made her open up. "Brandon canceled the lease this morning. The apartment was under his name. I lost my job 2 months ago because of the pregnancy. My parents died when I was a teenager. Now I have nothing but what's in this suitcase. I don't even know where I'll sleep tonight." Her honesty struck a chord deep inside Ethan, awakening memories he thought had long faded. 5 years ago, his wife Marina died of cancer, leaving behind a legacy of grace and strength that Grace now reminded him of. "I have a library at my home," Ethan said suddenly. "A massive collection that needs cataloging. I've been putting it off for years." Grace blinked in surprise. "Are you offering me a job, an opportunity?" Ethan corrected. "Fair pay, flexible hours considering your condition." "Can you start tomorrow?" Grace hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but where will I stay? I don't have money for a hotel." Ethan smiled. "There's a guest house on my property. It's separate from the main house, fully equipped, and it's been empty for years. You can stay there temporarily until you get your first paycheck." Grace shook her head. "I can't accept that. I don't know you. You could be dangerous." Ethan chuckled softly. "I get that. Here's my card." He handed her a sleek business card with his name and contact info. "Google me. You'll find out I'm no danger." She took the card with trembling hands, recognizing the name Campbell Technologies, one of the country's most successful firms. "Why help me?" Grace asked quietly. "Because my wife was once where you are, alone, pregnant with no one," Ethan replied. "She always said life is a circle. The help you give eventually finds its way back to you. Also, that guest house and library have been empty for 5 years. Maybe we both need something the other can offer." Grace's instincts screamed caution, but with nowhere else to turn, she agreed to stay the night. As Ethan helped her to his car, their hands brushed a spark neither expected. That night, Grace sat alone in the cozy guest house, overwhelmed by the whirlwind that had swept her from despair to hope. For the first time in months, she dared to believe her life might change. Thanks for watching. Sorry for the interruption, but we hope you will help us improve our content in the future. What would you do if you were in Grace's shoes? Would you trust a stranger who offers help when you've been burned before? What would be your biggest fear and hope facing a life-changing situation like hers? Have you ever been in a moment where a random act of kindness changed everything? Share your story or thoughts below. The morning sunlight filtered softly through the curtains of the guest house as Grace stirred awake, her hand instinctively resting on her belly. For the first time in what felt like forever, she was surrounded by comfort, a cozy bed, a stocked kitchen, and the quiet promise of safety. Yet beneath the calm, a storm of nerves churned. Tomorrow was her first day working for Ethan Campbell, the tech titan who'd pulled her from the streets and into a world she never imagined. Ethan arrived promptly, his casual jeans and blue shirt replacing the sharp suit from their first meeting. There was a new lightness in his step, a gentleness that hadn't been there before. "Good morning, Grace," he said, his voice low but warm. "How did you sleep? Better than I thought I would," she admitted, her smile tentative. As they walked together toward the sprawling Campbell estate nestled among the vineyards of Napa Valley, Grace's heart pounded with anticipation and fear. Could she truly belong here? The library was vast and magnificent, towering shelves crammed with books of every kind, some first editions gleaming with age and value, others dog-eared and well-loved. But the room was chaos. Stacks of books littered every surface, papers spilled across tables, and dust danced in the beams of sunlight. "This is where you'll work," Ethan said, watching Grace's eyes widen. "The task is to catalog and organize. Take your time. I don't expect miracles overnight." Grace nodded, rolling up her sleeves. "I'll start with an inventory, then sort by genre, author, value. Whatever makes sense." Her voice held a new determination. Days passed and Grace settled into a routine. Ethan's support was unwavering. He brought ginger tea for her morning nausea and snacks for the moments when fatigue hit hard. He checked in constantly, his concern genuine, no longer masked by the reserved demeanor of a CEO. One afternoon, as Grace reached for a book on the highest shelf, a sharp, unfamiliar pain gripped her abdomen. She gasped, clutching the shelf for balance. Ethan was instantly by her side, his eyes wide with alarm. "Grace, sit down. Tell me what you're feeling." The pain intensified, a searing wave crashing through her. It's different," she whispered. "I think it's time." Without hesitation, Ethan scooped her into his arms. The ride to the hospital was a blur of harsh streetlights and her labored breaths. Nurses rushed them through the sterile environment stark against the warmth of Ethan's touch. Hours passed like lifetimes. Grace fought through every contraction, her strength tested beyond measure. Ethan never left her side, whispering encouragement, holding her trembling hands. Finally, at 2:47 a.m., a tiny cry pierced the air. Santiago had arrived. Fragile and small, he was immediately rushed to the neonatal intensive care unit. Grace's eyes blurred with tears as she watched her son being taken away, swaddled and silent. Ethan's face was a mask of worry. He needs special care. His lungs aren't fully developed. Grace nodded numbly. The fight was just beginning. The hospital night stretched long. Grace barely slept, her gaze never leaving the incubator, where Santiago fought for every breath. Ethan took turns with Lily, his assistant, keeping vigil, offering quiet words of hope. Then came the threat. Brandon Lewis. The man who had cast Grace out into the streets was back, demanding paternal rights. His eyes, cold voice laced with greed, Brandon claimed legal custody, threatening to tear apart the fragile family Ethan and Grace had begun to build. But Ethan was unyielding. He met Brandon's threats with a calm ferocity, calling in legal support and private security. "If you come near my family again, you'll regret it," Ethan warned, his voice low and dangerous. Brandon's visit sent ripples of fear through Grace, but also sparked a fire within her. No longer the powerless girl on the street, she stood tall, ready to fight for her son's future. The courtroom battle was intense. Brandon's true motives unraveled. He wasn't a father seeking to reconnect, but a man hungry for money, even considering selling his own child to the highest bidder. When the truth emerged, the judge's decision was clear. Ethan would become Santiago's legal father with Grace by his side. Their family was no longer defined by blood, but by love, choice, and sacrifice. The day they brought Santiago home was filled with laughter, tears, and the quiet understanding that their lives had irrevocably changed. As Grace looked at Ethan cradling their son, she whispered, "We survived the storm. Now we build our future." Ethan smiled, kissing her forehead. "Together." Thanks for watching. Sorry for the interruption, but we hope you will help us improve our content in the future. What would you do if someone from your past suddenly threatened the life you've built? Would you fight with everything you have or walk away to protect yourself? Have you ever had to stand up against the impossible for someone you love? Share your thoughts below. Months passed, and with every sunrise, Grace Thompson, Ethan Campbell, and little Santiago wove themselves tighter into a new family, one built not by blood, but by love, courage, and unwavering commitment. The house in Napa Valley that once echoed with silence now hummed with laughter, tiny footsteps, and the soft rustle of turning pages in the library Grace had brought back to life. The adoption process was swift, thanks to overwhelming evidence of Brandon Lewis's neglect and malicious intent. Grace signed the papers with tears of relief and joy, making Ethan Santiago's legal father. The courtroom was filled with an undeniable sense of hope and justice. A broken past finally mended by a brighter future. With legal hurdles behind them, life unfolded like a precious tapestry. Ethan, once a solitary figure buried in work, rediscovered joy in the simple moments, rocking Santiago to sleep, watching Grace's smile as she read stories aloud, and feeling the warmth of a family he thought he'd lost forever. One crisp autumn evening, as the golden light poured through the vineyard windows, Ethan knelt before Grace in the very garden where their journey had quietly begun. In his hand gleamed a delicate diamond ring framed by two smaller stones. "This diamond in the center is you," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "The two stones are Santiago and me. Together we're whole. Grace Thompson, will you marry me?" Grace's breath caught, overwhelmed by the promise of a future she never dared to imagine. "Yes," she whispered, tears shining like stars in her eyes. Their wedding was intimate and heartfelt, held under the sprawling oak tree in the estate's garden, surrounded by close friends, family, and the staff who had become extended family. Santiago, now toddling with unsteady steps, giggled as he proudly carried the rings down the aisle. The years that followed brought challenges and triumphs, but through every twist and turn, their love deepened. Ethan's house was no longer a cold monument to loss, but a home overflowing with warmth and hope. Grace's dreams of stability and happiness blossomed into reality. One evening, as they watched Santiago sleep peacefully in his nursery, Grace turned to Ethan. "Do you ever regret that day when you stopped and helped me?" Ethan smiled, brushing a stray curl from her face. "Not for a second." That moment saved all of us. Their story wasn't just about survival, it was about redemption, resilience, and the transformative power of kindness. A chance encounter beneath a tree had changed 3 lives forever. Thanks for watching. Sorry for the interruption, but we hope you will help us improve our content in the future. What do you think about Grace and Ethan's journey? Did their story move you? What moment touched you the most? If you felt inspired, please comment 100 below. Also, tell me, where are you watching from? I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to share this story with someone who might need a little hope today.